So this guy is 6'8" and more than 220 pounds. He's been called one of golf's new age super bombers. At the 2023 Open Championship, he led the field in driving distance with a more than 330-yard average, which included a 380-yard drive. He became the #1 ranked amateur in the world after winning one of golf's most prestigious tournaments. That win got him into the 2024 Masters, where he led the field again in driving distance. And in the crowd following him at Augusta National was celebrity Harry Styles. He wanted an up-close look to see what was going on. This guy's name is Christo Lamprecht, and every time I watch him swing the golf club, I wonder if I'm watching the future of golf. That's because he's built unlike any golfer on this planet, and his golf swing is pretty different. Because his swing breaks the model of what a good golf swing should be. But when you dive deeper into the details, you can start to see hints of great players from past generations. And suddenly, it all starts to make sense. So let's get into it. This is the story of Christo Lamprecht and his one-of-a-kind golf swing. Alright, so why does Christo Lamprecht hit the ball so far? What makes him, as I wrote back in 2023, a super bomber? The first and most obvious answer is Christo's height. He's 6'8", which is more than a foot taller than Rory McIlroy. It's about 8 inches taller than Brooks Koepka, and it's about 4 inches taller than Tony Finau, who's one of the bigger players on the PGA Tour. And if you're wondering why being tall is such a baked-in distance advantage for golfers, it's pretty simple. It's because taller golfers, they have longer body parts, they have longer arms and longer legs and longer torsos, which means that when they swing a golf club, the golf club travels a further and longer distance than shorter golfers. And every inch further in distance the golf club travels, it's an extra chance to pick up speed, a bit like an airplane running down the runway. It's gathering speed with every inch it travels. And the best part about it is that these golfers, they don't need to do anything different. It's why these smooth tempo kings whose golf swings we all love, guys like Ernie Els and guys like Vijay Singh, they tend to be tall because they don't need to do anything different. They can just swing their natural swing, and their longer body parts allow the club to gather speed as it goes. It's also why you notice the prototypical PGA Tour players start to get a little different. These guys are taller now and thicker. They're starting to look like baseball players. But anyway, while being tall generally adds a bit of a distance advantage for golfers, being super tall like Christo can also have its drawbacks. For one, there's the equipment. A few years ago, the USGA announced that it was capping the length that driver shafts could be. They couldn't be longer than 46 inches. And most golfers, regardless of their height, already swing drivers about that length. They kind of live pretty close to that limit. Will Zalatoris, for instance, is 6'1", and he uses a driver that's almost 46 inches long. But then there's Christo Lamprecht, who's 6'8", and he's also using a 46-inch driver because that's all he's allowed to use. It means that Christo is effectively swinging a golf club that's a lot shorter for him than it's supposed to be. The equivalent would be like Will Zalatoris, who again is 6'1", swinging a driver that's about 42 inches long. And 42 inches, that's not very long. That's the length of about your average 7-wood. So without the luxury of being able to fit the clubs specifically to his body, Christo learned that he had to adapt his technique to the clubs he was using. And that brings us to the most interesting part of Christo's golf swing. Look at his left leg through the ball. Look at how it bends as he swings through. Now this is really different than what basically every modern PGA Tour player does. That's because when teachers study how golfers push and pull against the ground in order to use it to generate more power, they found that every golfer on the planet, from the guy at your driving range to the best players you can think of on tour, they all do 3 very specific things. They push themselves across the ground, they torque and twist the ground so they can turn around it, and they also push against the ground, which launches their body up. That third one is pretty easy to spot, and it's a really important power source in a lot of golf swings. It's why you see someone like Justin Thomas or Scotty Scheffler getting airborne as they swing a golf club, because they're pushing against the ground so hard that they're literally launching themselves into the air. The problem is that if Christo did this, he'd be pushing himself further away from the golf ball, making his already too short golf clubs even shorter. It would have created a coordination issue for a guy who was trying to play top-level junior golf while he was going through an insane growth spurt. Christo started high school at about 5'6", and he ended college at 6'8". And for every inch further away he grew from the ball, that created another new problem that he needed to solve.
I grew about a foot in a year and a half or 2 years, so that was pretty outrageous with a lot of club changes. Luckily then I was working with Ping already, and I think they changed me 6 sets in 2 years. So a lot of sets were changed, lengthened, and everything was toying around, and my golf swing feel different every week. So there was a lot of changes with that, no doubt about it. So it was an interesting time for me as a junior golfer.
He needed to figure out a way not to get further away from the golf ball, but to get closer down to it. So that's why he started to bend his knees as he swung through. He learned out of necessity to create a really stable, predictable foundation with his legs. A way of controlling the space between himself and the golf ball that he was trying to hit.
So yeah, for me it feels natural. Obviously it looks a lot further, it's wider, but I think that incorporates with my feeling of I like to be stable when I'm hitting a golf shot, and I feel like I swing the best when I'm standing wide and I'm standing close, far away from it, and I can swing it around my body. I feel like when I start getting it narrow, my center of gravity is a little higher up than most people, so I like kind of feeling stable.
When you measure this, what you'll find is that most golfers, maybe even you, when they swing the club through, their pelvis actually lifts up about an inch or an inch and a half. But when you measure Christo, his pelvis goes down towards the ground, about 2.5 inches, which is a lot. According to Sportsbox AI, that puts him in the 1 percentile of all golfers they've ever measured. He's a true unicorn among tour players, but by bringing himself closer to the ground as he swung, he figured out a way to make his too short clubs actually feel a little bit more normal. And to make up for this power that he lost from not being able to launch up off the ground, he figured out that while he couldn't go up and down as he swung, he could go across. So that's what he did. Look at how Christo's lower body moves through the ball right here. Once he gets to the top of the backswing, Christo launches his entire body weight all the way across his body. He does this so much that while Christo was in the 1 percentile of vertical movement, he was in the 92nd percentile in horizontal or side-to-side movement. And therein lies Christo's superpower. He's really good at getting himself down and across. This down and across movement is pretty unusual, but you can spot it pop up from time to time. Byron Nelson was a pretty tall guy who learned golf with too short clubs, and you can see how aggressively he moves down and across the ground into that bent left knee. 6'3" Alan Doyle was one of the best senior golfers of all time, and look how aggressively he moves down and across the ground as he swings. Mo Norman wasn't a very tall guy at all, but he stood really far away from the ball because he thought this was just the best way of doing it. To learn more about that, you should check out our video right here. But anyway, Mo Norman stood so far away from the ball that he had the same spatial issue with the golf ball as Christo. He needed to get back closer to it, so he started bending his left knee and thrusting hard down and across into it. And then there's Christo, who learned this move sort of intuitively. He's never had a coach, and over the years he said a lot of people have tried to talk him out of his own golf swing and try to have him learn a new move. But Christo didn't listen. He learned how to build a golf swing around his own unique body. He didn't really care what it looked like, and he definitely didn't care what you thought his golf swing should be. He intuitively figured out a move that brought the best out of his own unique body. And in the process, he learned all the tools that he needed to go all the way to the very top.